Do you love movies? So do I. What's up, y'all? It's KB, and I love movies, inviting you to listen to The Conversation, a film podcast where passion meets perspective and opinion. From the old school to the new, I invite a guest on to discuss the movies that thrill us, challenge us, break our hearts, or even blow our minds. There's always new episodes dropping wherever you get your podcasts. So join the conversation. We don't just watch movies. We love talking about them too. The Conversation with KB Loves Movies, a part of Someone's Favorite Productions podcast network.
Hey, this is Jason Kleberg from the Force 5 podcast, a show that forces a guest to come up with a movie-themed top 5 list topic, and then we reveal our picks on air. Top 5 heist films, top 5 tearjerkers, top 5 movie dogs. Every show you'll be asking yourself, what would be on my list? Guests include directors, screenwriters, actors, podcasters, musicians, authors, and even a professional wrestler. Subscribe to the Force 5 podcast, and you won't just be a listener, you'll be a list nerd. The Force 5 podcast, available wherever you're listening now.
That's the world bantamweight jerk-off champ over there, huh?
Welcome to Wake Up Heavy, the world's greatest horror movie podcast. In this episode, my weird dad will be talking about
this summer, if you're planning to go camping, don't. If you're looking forward to midnight swims, don't.
Sneak on back to the campsite. Get some matches. Build us a hot fire. Don't be long.
And if you're thinking about being with someone where no one can see you, don't. Because this summer, a legend of terror isn't just a campfire story anymore.
They say he smashed his way through the bunk room door, just a mass of flames. Burned alive, cried out, I will return! I will have my revenge! He lives on whatever he can catch. Right now, he's out there, watching, waiting. Who's there?
What happened one summer 5 years ago is about to happen again, and again, and again. The Burning.
Hello and welcome back to Wake Up Heavy Recollections of Horror. This is Mark Begley, your host, and this is the final entry, at least for now, of the Why Do I Hate Slashers I Don't Actually sub-series, and today I will be talking about the 1981 film The Burning. I will be employing the ever-handy Psychotronic Encyclopedia film for the synopsis of this, so let's get on it. The Burning, 1981 Filmways. Producer, Harvey Weinstein. Director, Tony Malum. Screenwriters, Peter Lawrence and Bob Weinstein. A Friday the 13th copy about a disfigured man who had been burned by kids while he was a gardener at a summer camp. He returns to the camp to maul and decapitate with giant hedge shears. Lots of modern teens get killed to the music of Rick Wakeman. Filmed around Buffalo, New York. Tom Savini did the gore effects, which were mostly cut to avoid an X rating. The soundtrack is available, rated R. I do take exception to this being called a Friday the 13th ripoff, as the production of the film actually started before Friday the 13th came out, and the script was predated all of that by a year or two. That's not to say that the success of Friday the 13th didn't spur this on, but, it's a zeitgeist type thing. This stuff was percolating in the minds of a lot of people after the success of Halloween, and we got this glut of campground killer movies. This being, in my opinion, one of the better of that group. And there are a couple of reasons why I prefer this one over actually even some of the Friday the 13th films. It's that core of actors. And we have the debuts of Jason Alexander, Fisher Stevens, and Holly Hunter, although I don't think she has any lines in this. And we also have the camp counselors actually doing camp counselory things. Plus, we also have camp attendees, young kids here, and we see a lot of the goings-on in the camp. And I like that aspect of it, and it relates to Sleepaway Camp in that regard, which I need to make a correction in I need to ask Sam to do this actually on his site. I conflated those two on my top 10 slasher list and said that The Burning was the film where a number of the small campgoers actually get killed, and that happens in Sleepaway Camp. And I think I had rewatched the two fairly close together before I did that list, and there are other similarities between them, and so I just got a little confused.
There we go again.
Now, if I had had any foresight at all when I started thinking about this sub-series of episodes, I think I would have done what I'm going to do now with the first one and continued on, and that is a slasher scorecard and those tropes and things that we see in many of these movies, and kind of go down a list. Could have created a whole list and checked them off on each episode, and of course I didn't do that, but I am going to do that for The Burning because it ticks off a lot of those similarities that run through the bulk of these slasher films, especially the campground slasher films. So here is my slasher scorecard for The Burning. Flashback to an incident that sets off our killer, check. And in this case, it is a prank gone bad. Campground, check. Double check. Synth score, check. Tom Savini effects, check. Red herrings, check. Hormonal camp counselors, triple check. Chasing a baseball into the woods, and I included that because I'm pretty sure the same thing happens in Sleepaway Camp, and again, I may be conflating the two. I know both contain baseball games, so check. POV of killer, check. And in this one, we have a nice little touch because of the disfigurement of our slasher. The lens is smeared on the edges in all his point of view shots, and I kind of like that little touch. TNA, triple or quadruple check on that. And scary campfire story, check. I'm sure there are numerous other instances of these tropes throughout this film that appear in many others. Feel free to create your own slasher scorecard. One of the other reasons I really enjoy this one is the acting. We have people that go on to lengthy and successful careers, Jason Alexander and Holly Hunter, for example, and we have a lot of interesting interactions between the counselors. It's a little more, I don't want to say deep, but it seems like these people know each other and have worked with each other before. There is at least the appearance of a history with these people, and whether or not these actors got so into it that they created backstories for themselves or not, I don't know, but it has that feeling to it. There's a little more meat on the bone on this one, and a lot of that has to do with the script and with the acting. The sex and the kills is all pretty standard stuff. The effects get a lot of praise for this, in particular for one scene involving a raft, a bunch of the counselors, Cropsey, and his garden shears. But a lot of it is retreads of stuff that Savini had done before. as well as some stuff that he would employ later on. At the time, it may have been a little more novel, but if you're someone like me who is going back and seeing things out of order or for the first time, and you've seen all this Savini stuff before, but it is still very well done for the most part. So I mentioned that the killer's name is Cropsey, and this is based on a New York urban legend, and I don't know the actual story of Cropsey. I watched the Cropsey documentary, probably 4 or 5 years ago now, and I still don't really remember what exactly that urban legend entails. I'm sure it's something about a disfigured man who kills children. But at around the same time, another film called Madman was in production and was going to be a Cropsey movie as well. And since The Burning came out sooner than Madman, that got changed a little bit in that. And Madman is a pretty fun one too. I think I have that on my honorable mentions in that top 10 slasher list. I still think The Burning is a better film, or I like it more, I should say. But also around that same time, another film with the title The Burning was being produced, and that ended up coming out as Don't Go in the House, which is also on my top 10 slasher list, and is a sleazy piece of work. So Cropsey is the caretaker...
That doesn't sound right.
So Cropsey is the caretaker / gardener of Camp Blackfoot, and this is where our flashback takes place, and a group of, I don't think they're counselors at this point, I think they're camp goers, decide to pull a prank on him.
Tonight's the night. Cropsey is going to get what he deserves. Remember what he did to you, Snoop? And when he beat up Jamie really bad for nothing? Billy says Cropsey's been getting away with this shit for years. If we pull this off, it'll be the biggest number Camp Blackfoot has ever seen.
And it ends very badly with Cropsey getting burned severely over, I think, 90% of his body. He survives and goes through 5 years of rehabilitation. At that point, he gets out, and we have this interesting first kill in the movie that is unrelated to the campground scenario, where he is stumbling around New York, Buffalo, or whatever New York City they filmed it in, and comes across a prostitute and takes her up. He is dressed all in black trench coat, black hat. Of course, once they get up to the room, she sees that he is horribly disfigured, and he kills her. And I was thinking while I was watching it this time that this first kill is very Giallo-esque. Cropsey is all in black gloved, and he picks up a weapon of opportunity with this pair of scissors. And it made me a little sad because I kind of wish they had stuck with that a little more, even when he gets back to the campground, or the other campground. It is not Camp Blackfoot at this point. But I think that could have offered a little bit of style, not unlike Pieces, which employs that Giallo-esque masked killer. Now, this whole setup with the flashback and then moving ahead 5 years later was and is still a little bit confusing to me, especially in regards just to the structure of the film. We go through all this trouble of setting this up, and then we still employ some red herrings throughout the film, as if we, the audience, don't know that Cropsey has made his way back to this area. And I don't know if that was supposed to create tension, or if it was more that for the sake of the characters themselves, which really doesn't make any sense, whether they know who is doing this or suspect one of the counselors or not is sort of irrelevant. That doesn't create tension in the audience. So it's a little confusing as to why they bother with that. Now, the red herring is played by Brian Backer, who was, I think, the next year in Fast Times at Ridgemont High as Mark Ratner. And in this movie, he plays Alfred, and he is the weird loser loner that everybody picks on and can't stand. Well, not everybody. There is a bully named Glazer at the camp.
What are you staring at, you little fucking weirdo, huh? Look, I'm warning you. If I even catch you looking at her, I'm gonna tear you up so bad, your own mother won't recognize you. You dig?
Laser?
Who picks on him, but a lot of people do get annoyed with him, and he is not helping himself in any way by acting like such a turd most of the time. The other confusing thing for me about it is that the head counselor, Todd, is supposedly one of the kids or counselors, whatever it is, at the beginning that pulls this prank on Cropsey. And it's two different actors, and since it's only 5 years apart and they do not look anything alike, I think the first time I watched it, I totally missed that he had been involved in it in any way. I think with a 5-year time difference, you could have actually just gone with the same actor and made him look a little younger in the flashback scene. Knowing that now, though, then I think, well, is this a personal vendetta against Todd? And how in the world would Cropsey know that he is now the head counselor of this other nearby camp? So, again, stretches in logic, suspend your disbelief. It's a slasher film, and I guess we're not supposed to think too deeply on it. Another thing that I don't particularly care for, which is kind of becomes a touchy subject now, knowing who wrote and produced the film. I really noticed this third time watching that I didn't care for how the male counselors treated the female counselors. They're assholes, basically, and very manipulative when it comes to getting what they want, which is sex, of course. And so that kind of left a bad taste in my mouth this time. And if you have any objection to Harvey Weinstein, well, I think most sensible people have an objection to him as a person. But if you can't watch stuff that he has been involved in, then skip this one. It's a little weird, though, how this all came about, because he and his brother were rock promoters back at this time. And they released a concert film, or 2 concert films, by this gentleman, Tony Malum, and ended up, I think, doing well with that and decided to get into movies. And, of course, the popular thing at the time was slashers, and so they got this documentarian director to make this, and he did go on to direct a handful of other feature films, but worked mainly in music and documentary films. And that leads me to the score of the film, which was done by Rick Wakeman, who had been in Yes. I don't know if he was at the time this came out or if he had left. And then I get to thinking, didn't he do Inferno as well? But that was Keith Emerson. So these prog rock keyboardists kind of dipped their toes into the movie biz, and it sort of made sense to do it for slasher films since those employed mainly synth scores. It's a decent score. It's playing in the background here, so you're hearing a little bit of it. But I wonder if that was because of the connection with Tony Malum. I don't know that he put out a Yes documentary, but it's very possible. You could probably look that up on something like Wikipedia. I did not. I'm sure I mentioned this on the Why Didn't I Rent This episode on Alone in the Dark, but the editor of this film was Jack Shoulder, who directed Alone in the Dark and another favorite from my youth, The Hidden. And check that one out. That's got Kyle MacLachlan as an alien, and I remember watching that a bunch back then. I've mentioned a lot of the cast already, but I wanted to kind of go through some of the other ones and then also touch on Jason Alexander in this film. For one thing, he has a full head of hair, which I'm sure didn't last too terribly long after this, because I know by Pretty Woman he was already fairly bald. And as another balding gentleman, I feel your pain. But he is very Jason Alexander-y in this movie already, and I think I said, or at least read in the Psychotronic review, that this was his debut, but he has got something going on already, and he is very fun to watch in this.
Who ordered the Playboy? Over here.
Dave, did you get my Hustler?
Hustler? What are you on with Hustler, Woodstock? You're too small. Hey, size never stopped, Woody. That's the world bantamweight jerk-off champ over there, huh? Just stick with me, kid. Keep flexing the muscle, huh?
Another familiar face is Ned Eisenberg, who is that guy from That Thing. He is one of those character actors who has a very familiar face, and you will recognize him immediately. He has done a lot of episodes of Law & Order and Law & Order SVU, which my wife and I pretty much have seen nearly all of. And Fisher Stevens, of course, another debut. And he plays Woodstock, which is kind of fitting just because of his physicality, and that's all I'll say on that. Don't want to rip on somebody's looks. That's not what this show is about. But yeah, it's sort of an apropos name, I think. And then we have Leah Ayres, who was in Bloodsport with Jean-Claude Van Damme, and Carrick Glenn, who was in a film that I have been trying to watch for a while called Girls' Night Out. And there were a lot of cast members in this who, when I checked their IMDb, only had 4 or 5 credits. So it's kind of, one of those strange things where some of these people took off and worked for years and years and years, and others just kind of petered out after a couple. Such is the life of a film actor, I suppose. So this is a solid recommendation for me if you can get past, or if it doesn't bother you, who had their dirty little fingers in the making of it. And it would make a good double bill with Sleepaway Camp or with Madman. At the time of this recording, it is streaming on Tubi, which is free. And I just realized the last 2 movies I watched on Tubi, it's one of those free things like, what's the other one that I can't think of right now, but it has ads. And the last 2 movies I watched had 0 ads. And I don't know if that was because I watched them through Xfinity or not. But if you have a Fire Stick or a Roku, you should have access to it. And they actually have a very good horror selection. So I recommend it, especially for free films. And when they do have commercials, there aren't very many breaks. Unlike things like Sony Crackle that have 6 or 7 ad breaks throughout. Okay, I guess it is time for the Wake Up Heavy watch list. I don't have any new stories, so someone please send one in. I would love to read one, but here we go. I watched something on TCM Underground called The Pyramid, which was an interesting 70s flick. I watched Dial Code Santa Claus, aka Deadly Games, which I think played some festivals earlier this year and got a lot of notice. It is a very Home Alone-ish French Christmas horror film that I enjoyed quite a bit. It is on Shudder as Deadly Games, and it has 3 or 4 other possible titles as well. I watched Seconds with Rock Hudson that I hadn't seen in quite some time, and I really dig that film. Another movie I haven't watched in forever is Santa Sangre by Alejandro Jodorowsky, and I first saw this film back in 1990 when I was in London. I think it was the last movie I saw during that semester there. I watched a Jeff Goldblum movie called The Mountain on Hulu that I was a tad disappointed in. It was a fairly interesting idea, and then it sort of tanked the last half hour. Still probably worth a look, though. I did a little Lynch double feature with Eraserhead. It is cold and foggy here, and my immediate go-to in that kind of weather is Eraserhead. And I may actually watch it again today because it is cold and foggy again. And then I watched Dune, which I love. Do not bash on Dune in my presence. I watched Shadow of a Doubt, one of my favorite Hitchcock films. I love the kid actors in this movie. I watched something new, The Headhunter on Shudder, which was pretty fun. And then a new old movie that I had read about, I think on BNS about movies actually, called Death Warmed Up. Super gory Australian film that was made just before Peter Jackson's Bad Taste, which is also a super gory, New Zealand, New Zealand film. And then I hit Disney Plus again for some old childhood favorites. I dove into the Kurt Russell film, The Computer Wore Tennis Shoes, and Escape to Witch Mountain, which I wrote up a little piece for BNS about movies, and it should be up on the 15th of this month, I believe. And then something I hadn't watched in forever and actually had no real recollection of while I was watching, so maybe I didn't watch it ages ago. The Boys from Brazil, based on a book by Ira Levin of Rosemary's Baby fame. I watched Pinocchio for the heck of it on Disney Plus. Oh, another movie that I had been trying to get a hold of for a long time, I ended up watching on YouTube, called Popcorn. This was supposedly a film that Bob Clark and Alan Ormsby worked on. Alan Ormsby got dumped as the director, and I think Bob Clark was the uncredited producer. And this may be the film. I know I mentioned this at some point that kind of shattered their relationship. But I didn't care for it as much as I probably should have. Of course, the copy wasn't very good, and that may have played a part in it. And then I watched Silent Night, Deadly Night Part 2. I did not care for. Silent Night, Deadly Night is not one of my favorite Christmas horror movies, and this one didn't do any better in my eyes, since about 40% of the film is flashbacks to the first film. But I know a lot of people dig this one for its campy aspects, and I didn't care for it. My wife and I watched The Laundromat on Netflix, which was super fun. Give it a watch. All right, speaking of Christmas movies, I will be doing Christmas Evil for the show sometime in the next couple of weeks, hopefully before Christmas Day. That should be released. And then a couple of the other things that I probably tossed out on the very recent last episode. I think that should do it for today. Like I said, I'm going to cram December as full as possible with episodes so that you won't miss me too much during January. Have a great day. Thank you for listening. And don't forget,
anything can happen when you wake up heavy. Ho, 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 ho.